Hi to everyone, I'm Guenther Steiner and you're listening to Beyond the Grid.
Hi F1 fans, Tom Clarkson here, welcoming you to another edition of Beyond the Grid, presented by Bose Quiet Comfort 35.2 wireless headphones. Those of you who've watched the Netflix series Formula One Drive to Survive will be familiar with the star of this week's show, and particularly his colourful language. But the show highlighted much more than his love of the F-bomb. His passion for racing and his honest and forthright management style came across in spades. I'm talking, of course, about the team principal of Haas, Guenther Steiner. Gunther has had a fascinating career across a wide array of motorsport categories, culminating in the top job at Haas. But he didn't walk into a ready-made team. Along with owner Gene Haas, Gunther spent 2 years building the team from scratch, and the results have been phenomenal. They finished 6th in their first Grand Prix and took 5th in the Constructors' Championship last year. We caught up in the heat of the Bahrain desert to talk about his life in F1 and where the Haas journey is headed next. But first up, we had to discuss his newfound fame. Well, Gunther, welcome to Be on the Grid. It's great to have you on the show. So, it seems you've become a bit of a celebrity, what with your starring role on F1 Drive to Survive, the new Netflix series. How do you reflect on that?
I don't really know. Everybody tells me, but to be completely honest, I didn't watch it because I actually don't, and this is honest, I don't like to watch myself because then you start to think, should I have been different or should I do things different? And I don't want to do things different, so I don't watch it. And you could say you don't want to learn. I think it's not about the learning. It's more like it's just I don't like to watch myself.
Now, what about this bad language, Gunther? Where did you learn to swear so brilliantly in English?
In England. Being too much with English people, I guess, you know. So it's quite a bad language sometimes, but it's never meant to offend anybody or to persons, you know, relating to persons. So it's more an expression. And I'm not trying to talk it right, you know. It shouldn't be there, but it's part of the game when you're competitive because in a normal day's work, it's a lot better. I mean, you don't get me, but Netflix, it was behind the scenes what they showed, and that is how it works. So just to make it clear, my wife was not impressed by the language. And
what about your daughter?
She's not allowed to watch it. You know, that's what my wife said. Greta doesn't gonna go and watch it. You know, she's still too young. My daughter is 10 years old, so we ignore it. Netflix, you know, so no, it never happened. You know.
But how was it when they were filming it? Because I mean, I know they've been doing stuff here in Bahrain with the team as well. Do you know that the cameras are there, or do you feel very relaxed?
It's almost difficult to explain. For me, it's not a lot of work. They put a mic on you and they film you. They have to work. I don't have to work because I am like I am. I cannot change anything because then I don't do my job. And as I'm not an actor, I'm not going to act. I'm going to do my job. And if they don't like what they film, it's their problem and not mine. If they like it, again, some things. But again, they are very fair and say, this is what happened. Are you okay to broadcast it? And I think it's for the fans to see how we actually do, and I'm not acting because I couldn't do that. First of all, I'm not good at it, and I don't look good anyway. So, but it's not a lot of work for me. It's putting a mic on, and then you just do your work and go along, and therefore you see this honesty, you know.
Well, honesty is a great word because I felt it was quite an insight into your management style. Lots of passion, lots of honesty. What you see is what you get. Is that a fair description of your management style?
Absolutely. I'm always speak with people very clear. Some people think I'm too direct, but I think as long as you don't offend people, just to be clear, it gives them a chance to, if there is something we discuss or we don't agree on, it gives them a chance to get my view on how I see it, and I respect people answering back to me. I actually want that. I don't want yes sir people. You know, I want people which come back with me with. But I think to start the dialogue honest, I need to be the honest one. I cannot back them. Yeah, it should be and paint everything a little bit pink. No, this is reality. Let's talk about it.
I mean, how has your relationship with Romain Grosjean been affected by it? Has it? Because you came down quite heavy on him I think there's a scene, isn't there, at the French Grand Prix last year where you're properly sticking the boot in.
Absolutely, but when I speak about him, I speak like this with him, and he knows me now well enough. I think we never spoke about this Netflix thing with him because it's no need. I think we sorted our. If there would have been a problem, why would we sign him another year? I think this helped him to get over his dishonesty, to help him to get over his problems in the beginning of the year, and the second half of the year last year, he had a fantastic year. I mean, he was the Romain we are used to, and I always told him, buddy, you know how to do it. You just need to get it back. I don't know where it is, but come on, get up. And sometimes when I speak like this, it's also my sarcasm in there, and people which know me can interpret that. Some people maybe on TV, they say that was harsh, but there is also a lot of sarcasm in these things.
Now, we've done Netflix, we've done Grosjean, but just Haas as a whole, how's it going? What's your progress report after 3 and a bit years?
In general, it's going pretty well, I would say. I mean, you always can be better. I mean, we should never be content until you win everything. And then when you win everything, you have to do it for less money. There's always something to aim for. But in general, for the only thing what I can compare it with the last teams which started from new, maybe, when was it, 9 years ago, there was a few new teams. They're not around anymore. We started from new, scored points in our first race. Up to now, never finished last in the World Championship. So last year we finished 5th. We could have got 4th. We made too many mistakes. Therefore we finished 5th, but it's still pretty good. In general, as a team, I think we keep on making progress. I think we have got a group of very good people together with the same philosophy of how to conduct business stroke racing. And I think for the F1 fan, to have a new team, to have an underdog like us, because we are a small team compared with some of the other ones, to have an underdog to fight with the big boys, it is quite interesting. And for sure it's interesting for us. So all in all, I would say that there's not a lot of negatives to report.
I think it's been a huge success story, both for yourselves and for Formula One. But is there anything you would have done differently in hindsight?
There is not one big thing which I would have done differently. And again, this is maybe difficult to explain. Is obviously if you look back and you say, oh, I would do everything the same, that would be being quite ignorant, because you always can do better. And with the benefit of the hindsight, you would do things a little bit different. You would not make mistakes you made, I mean, the most simple to explain it is the pit stop problems we have got always in Australia, at least the last 2 years. Yeah, if I would have known that before, we would have done something different. But it's more things like this where you look back, we should have done different, but not in general our business model, how we came in, how we conduct ourselves, how we race. I wouldn't change a lot. I think you always can tweak, but nothing big.
Gunther, what about the bigger picture stuff? You've got this partnership with Ferrari. Would you, in hindsight, perhaps have gone with Mercedes? Because look at the success of their power unit over the last 3 years. Sort of bigger picture stuff. Yeah. Would you have done that differently?
No. I mean, now looking back, I'm very happy with Ferrari because, again, I should say, we could have done with Mercedes because they had the better engine. But in the moment, I'm very happy with what Ferrari is doing for us. Even if they've got maybe in the beginning they had a little bit less horsepower. I think now they are very equal, by the way. But in the beginning, it's like there was other things. It's not only about the power unit. There's other things you learn, you work together. We have got very, very a good relationship with them. So no, I wouldn't.
What about Dallara? And can you just explain for people at home what they do for you and how sort of the car is put together?
More than welcome. I don't know how long I'm going to talk about this. No. Just to explain, Dallara is a race car and car manufacturer. They work for OEMs on road cars as well. But I think they are the leader now in the world on making one-make series. They've got good expertise in producing race cars. They haven't done an F1 car for a long time now. But how we work with Dallara is we have got a group of our own people there. In the beginning, it was too difficult to find all the right people. So we went back and said with Dallara, I know Mr. Dallara since more than 20 years. He's the engineering pope in Italy. Gianpaolo. And so we went there, spoke with the CEO, Andrea Pontreo, and said, this is what we want to do. Do you think we can work together on this? So we make our risk smaller and to produce a car and come to the grid, because in the beginning it was really because so many teams failed doing this, we couldn't take any risks to fail as well, especially as an US team, and we know all the history there. So we went there, and what they are doing, they are providing us engineering services, which are led by our own people, like all the aero department is our people. They supply services like the model makers. They supply that service. But also they've got a big manufacturing facility, Dallara and Dallara Compositi, and they produce, for example, the top, but the design of the top, which is the chassis of the car, it's done in collaboration with us. They have got some people which work full-time for us on our behalf, but they're employed by Dallara. So, and then they produce us, we do all the testing there because they are certified by the FIA to do all the testing, so they do a lot of that stuff for us on the chassis, on the structural parts of the car, the front and rear wing, on all them parts. So they are a very integral partner of our program.
And it's so multinational what you guys do, because obviously you've got the base in the US, you've got the base in the UK, you've got Dallara. I mean, how American is this team?
I think it's very American. The owner, Mr. Gene Haas, is American. His company, Haas Automation, which produces machine tools, is American. So we've got the administration and headquarters is in the United States. It's now maybe the smallest part of the three, but I think it comes back that is where the headquarters is, that's where the administration is. All the finance, HR is run out of from there. I'm there as well. Some of the time when I'm not traveling somewhere else, but I think it is American, but the biggest thing is Mr. Haas is American and we are on our American license.
If Gene Haas knew in 2014 what he knows now about Formula One, do you think he would have still done it?
Good question. I mean, the easy answer would be go and ask him, obviously, but we cannot because he's not here today. I think what surprised him is the complexity of this sport. First, the complexity of the technology, because the technology is amazing in this sport, but also the complexity of the business and the politics in here. I think he wasn't aware of this. He can cope with it, but now to give you the answer, would he not have done it anyway, I don't really know. But I think it surprised him a little bit how much more complex this sport is in all the elements compared with racing in NASCAR, where he owns a team as well. Stuart Haas Racing, he owns as well. So I think if he compares us with that one, I think for sure technology-wise it's more complex. In all aspects it's more complex. But again, I couldn't answer you.
What about the financial aspect of it?
I think financially, the aim for Mr. Haas is to his machine tool company it's big. It's the only remaining one in the United States. He produces everything there. He got a huge market share there. But for him, the name recognition globally was not great. And for him, Formula One was a way to bring it to the world, the name. And I think because F1 is a global, very big global sport, which still works, and I think it worked. So yes, it is very expensive, Formula One, but if you use it right, I think it makes the return just to bring your company or whatever you want to promote to get the investment back.
Gunther, has Formula One been more expensive than he was expecting, or has it come in pretty much at that level?
I think everything in life is more expensive than you want it to be. That is an easy. That's an easy answer. I said no. Yeah. If I say no, he thought it is pretty cheap. I mean, even if it is cheap, it would be still expensive because Formula One is a very expensive sport, and maybe that surprised him as well a little bit how much money it takes. And I think we can just survive in this environment because we got a little bit of a different business model, and we try to be very efficient. We are by far the smallest team here. people-wise.
How many people are you?
We are employed, we are about 200, and then we have got some people subcontracted from Dallara, which is about, I would say 60, 70. So we are not even 300 people, we are between 250 and 280 because it's fluctuating a little bit, but by far we are the smallest one here.
How difficult was it to sell the Formula One dream to Gene? Can you just talk us through how you met him, how the conversations went?
I had this business plan, and I was introduced to Gene by Joe Castor, which is Gene's right-hand man in NASCAR. And I met Joe when I worked in NASCAR, obviously. I didn't know Gene before, and then one day we just met. And when you say how difficult it was to convince, Gene doesn't get convinced; he needs to convince himself. Gene knows exactly what he wants. He's very smart in these things, you know. I needed just to explain him. He made his own decision. For me, it was not a selling job. I couldn't sell it. I saw that immediately with Gene. Either he wants to do it or he doesn't want to do it. I cannot sell it. That was my opinion, you know. So I talked him through, always very honest and straightforward, as I do. How I see it, how it is, and then the decision is yours if you want to do it or not.
But what's interesting is you already had a business plan. So although you had a business in America and you'd been working in NASCAR, you wanted to come back to Formula One.
I would say I saw the opportunity at the time to do something because all these small teams, they were struggling. And at the time there was this opportunity to, it was talked about, it never materialized, to have customer cars. And I'm a good friend of Stefano Domenicali, at the time the team principal at Ferrari. So I spoke with Stefano and said, if this is happening, would it make sense to have the customer cars based in the United States because they live there already, and things like this. And this model, how we developed over time together with Gene, you know, like how we do this best, how we get the most efficiency out of doing F1, because again, I go back to the teams which were not successful, just doing more of it, like they did, will not work. We realized if you have to do everything yourself, we cannot do it. You need to be a big OEM, and it takes you 5 years. And we didn't want to do it. I mean, you know, that was not interesting. So, because these teams which failed, they were not stupid people. They were very smart people. They were good people. It's just like, it's such a difficult task doing F1, and people still underestimate it. And I never underestimated it with Gene, and I think therefore he believed in me. I said, this is difficult. This is not like, oh, let's go and build a car and go racing, you know. This is so difficult. So we just said, just doing more of the same as the other ones will not guarantee us success. Obviously, our model, we weren't sure if it is successful or not, but at least we needed to try to do something different. And in the beginning, when we told people how we're going to do this, we have got a place in the US, a place in the UK, they said, this will never work. I said, but doing more of the same doesn't work, so we need to try to do something different. And we had, I would say, 98% of the people, when we came up with our plan, they said, this will never work. They will be gone in a year or two, but we are still here.
You're definitely still here. Now, there's two interesting points you raise. One is, do you feel that your business model is almost killing the traditional business model of Formula One? The McLarens, the Williams, who do everything themselves, you've come in and you're more competitive than them.
First of all, I don't want to kill anybody, just to make that one clear.
Yeah, no.
But no, just, yeah.
But do you see what I mean? It's kind of, you've changed, the goalposts are now moved.
What we didn't change, we didn't say that they cannot do what they want to do. They can decide. We didn't take away options. The options was there for them as well. If they take it, fine. If you don't take it, feel free. I'm not saying you should go away. Everybody can do within the regulation what they want. That's my opinion. It's a free world. If it is written there that you're allowed to do this, why not doing it like this? And you cannot say, you killed my business model. No, I'm not. You can still do whatever you want because it works for some. It works for Ferrari, it works for Mercedes. They have got a complete different business model than us, and they are world champion. So I'm sure McLaren and Renault and Williams, they could come back if they are good at it, to do it that business model. I'm not saying they should not do what they're doing. Feel free to do whatever you want as long as it's in the rules.
Yep. Second point you raise is, you know, there were lots of dissenters out there saying that the model was going to fail with the America and Banbury in England and Dallara. How have you succeeded where US F1 failed effectively. Now, for people listening who aren't aware of USF1, it was a team that almost came into being about, was it 10 years ago now, maybe?
Yeah, I think it was 10, yeah.
And it was going to be run out of, what was it, Charlotte, wasn't it, in the US? But that never happened. Why do you think your model has worked, whereas theirs didn't?
I think the biggest difference is...
the reason I'm asking you this is because you worked a little bit with USF1, am I
right?
My
company worked, yeah, my company worked.
You have a composite company in
Charlotte,
in America.
yeah. I think there was an underestimation of how difficult it is. And again, I want to go back, and I'm not saying, I think Ken and Peter had a very good idea, to make a team in the US. But I think they didn't know the complexity of the sport, technically to start off with, and then also financially. I think one of the big things, they didn't have a good backup behind financially. And secondly, I think technically they underestimated the task. It's something unbelievable here.
Okay, so it's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's very simple.
Well, look, how has, it's interesting underestimating the task, and how has Formula One changed during your time in it from when you joined Jaguar back in 2001? How different is it today?
Everything is Formula One is moving at such a pace. The technology of the cars, the finances, they go up every year because the technology goes up.
Can we talk money in terms of how much? What's your budget? Or do you want to? Can you?
Yeah,
can you talk about that?
I don't want to go into figures, but I don't remember. I would need to take the books out from 2001, but it has changed dramatically, and we're talking
double.
Oh, a little bit more than that.
Right,
I mean,
okay.
it's quite for a big team. I think it has 6-7 times the big ones. It's huge how it go. But the technology. But I wouldn't even go back to 2001. Just go back 5 years. Look at the car from 5 years ago to one of the cars now. Or look 6 years when we had the V8 engine here. And now look at the hybrid power units we run now. I mean, the technology, it moves at such a pace, it's amazing. I mean, it's the same with if you go from last year, from 18 to 19 with the regulation, we said we simplify the error. All of a sudden we go already faster. We simplified. Can you imagine if we wouldn't have done it, how fast we would be? It's amazing how fast it moves, I don't think there is a lot of industries which move at this speed. I think there is some industries like in computer science and things like this, they move pretty quick. But what we are doing in all senses, it's amazing.
It is, isn't it? And no other form of motorsport moves this fast either. And you've got lots of experience outside of Formula One. Formula One is unique, isn't it?
It's unique. I mean, I think that's what makes Formula One unique. But also the investment, the financial investment, it's so unique, bigger than any other form of motorsport as well. We don't have to forget about that.
Now, look, Gunther, you've got a fascinating backstory. And let's just touch on that now. How, for example, did the opportunity with Jaguar come about? Your first foray into Formula One?
Again, one of the strange stories of my life is like I worked for Ford in World Rallying. I was the technical director of the Ford Focus, which Colin McRae drove. And when that is what they tell me, because at the time I didn't know Niki Lauda. When Niki Lauda took over Jaguar or as a team principal, he was looking for people, and he asked somebody at Ford, because at the time Jaguar was owned by Ford, and the sport manager was the same motorsport manager, and said, do you know any people I could speak with, to employ? And said, yeah, speak with this guy. And one day I got a telephone call from Niki's secretary saying, Mr. Lauda would like to talk with you. I said, Niki Lauda was one of my, let's say, childhood people I looked up to, because I was watching him driving in Formula One, the McLaren and the Ferraris, the whole thing. So sure, I was going to speak with Niki Lauda. I mean, he's a legend, Niki's a legend. So can you call him back? Sure. So I called him back, and he said, can we meet? Sure. So I was in Vienna 2 weeks later, so we met for dinner. And then the next day he called me, I'm going to employ you. I said, all right. And then we spoke a little bit, and there where it started in Formula One. As simple as this, very simple stories, but they are like this, So, and then this was about, I think, March, April of 2001, and I started end of 2001 because I had to finish the homologation of the Ford Focus for the next year. That was the fourth people told Nicky, you cannot take Gunther out of this program because it hurts us. And then I went and worked with him.
And how much of a wrench was it for you to leave rallying? Because you'd cut your teeth in rallying, you'd worked your way up through various teams.
It is difficult, but at some stage you always want to grow, and for me, going to F1 and working for Niki Lauda was equaling the challenge and what I wanted to do. For me, Niki Lauda was a very successful entrepreneur, and you always want to move forward. And this was a good opportunity, which I said, I shouldn't miss.
They always say you should never meet your heroes. You've worked for one of yours. What was it like to work for Niki? What's he like on a day-to-day basis?
I had one of my best years professionally with Niki, because I just get on with him. I still speak with him frequently. Obviously less in the moment because he's recovering from his operations or from his health issues. But I always, even after I left Jaguar, we always were in contact. I went to see him. I had a great time. I always try to learn from people as much as I can because I think he's not only a good racer, he is what impresses me with him is a determination to want to do something. And that you just get when you work with him, how he does it. How we need to get there. And if you need to get there, you have to get there. Otherwise, you're not happy.
So why, with all his experience, your experience as well, why did the Jaguar thing not perhaps reap the rewards some people within Jaguar were expecting? I remember, was it Jack Nasser telling me once that he wanted to turn up at a racetrack and currently all the red Ferrari flags, he wanted them to be green to show the that Jaguar was successful. Why didn't that team succeed?
I think, I wouldn't say the problem. There was a lot of issues with Ford Motor Company about profitability, the cost of Formula One, and there was a lot of changes in. Jack Nasser left. So the guy which wanted to create this had left. So Professor Reitzler was there. He left. So there was this political uproar in the company away from us where we didn't have access to because we were the last boys in, So I think it all went wrong from there. From the big plan from Jack Nasser to have the sea of green and invest money and make it happen. It was like, how can we do this cheapest and outsmart everybody else by being cheap? And at the time, it didn't work. It just didn't work out because and Niki wasn't given enough time. I for sure wasn't given enough time. I started in December and left in December, so in a year. But the car the year after was a lot better already. But in Formula One, you cannot come in and expect magic, So, but I think there was the biggest thing was the really high up political of the Ford corporate. Were not behind the program anymore. They left it alone. They didn't want it to happen anymore. The godfather of it, Jack Nasser, left. Professor Reitzler left. That was it.
So too much movement at the top.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, how about your garden? Because you spent the whole of 2003 on gardening leave.
It's great.
But I mean, what did you do for a whole year? Because you were not allowed to work, were you?
It's pretty nice not to do anything for a year because I always work very hard and there was nothing. You couldn't work, so there is a lot of you have to catch up because if you work in this, I work in motorsport now. It is over 30 years. I need to count it now. 33 years this year that I work in motorsport. So if you have a year off in between, you just catch up with things you need to do. I painted my house. I did everything myself. It's just like you always find things to do if you want them to do. So it's sometimes for sure it gets a little bit boring, but then you go on holiday.
But look, you then garden was sorted, house was painted. You then did a brief stint in the DTM, but then the lure of Formula One came back, and you went to Red Bull. How different, obviously the same team effectively that Jaguar had been, same factory in Milton Keynes in the UK. How different was the vibe under Red Bull ownership compared to the Ford Motor Company?
What I would say, Red Bull wanted to get going. Mr. Mateschitz, he at Jaguar, it was always how little can we spend to do anything, or do we really want to do this? Everything was in doubt, while Mr. Mateschitz was, I want to be world champion one day. And it was like he wanted to get going. It's a complete different way of doing business. It's one was very the conservative way. Can we do this different, not spending money? No, you need to spend a certain amount of money. I'm not a money waster, but there needs to be a base of it, because as I always say, there's not many stupid people in Formula One. There's not many of them here. So, and in Red Bull, when Red Bull came in, it was like, what do we need to do to get better?
Okay, so then when Mateschitz then says to you, tell you what, Gunther, let's go NASCAR racing. That's a slightly left field thing to do. What was your thought process when he put that to you?
It is in the first instance, it was like, okay. I mean, I didn't know anything about NASCAR, to be honest, at the time. I know that it existed for obvious reasons, but not any detail. But I always had also, when I was younger, did this dream to live in the United States. And, but I never thought I can make it happen because...
Can I just stop you there? What was it about? Land of opportunity? What was it about?
Correct. Land of opportunity, America. I mean, it's this American dream, which somehow I think my generation still have or had, So, but never... I never actively looked into it, I looked maybe once or twice, but not seriously. And then this came up and I said, it would be actually nice to learn about a new thing. As I said, I always want to learn new things. And going to America wouldn't be bad for a few years, So I spoke with my wife, obviously, as you have to do.
Of course.
She should be doing, and she was not opposed to it. And then we looked a little bit more and said, let's do it.
And how difficult a project was it? As you say, you didn't know that much about NASCAR. Where do you begin?
They had already a small base there. The American, I think he was the CEO was a big fan of NASCAR. The CEO of Red Bull Drinks Company in the States was a big fan of NASCAR. So they had a small base of it. But what Mr. Mateschitz asked me to bring in is like bring F1 into that one and try to make progress. It's what I find, it is a complete different world, and I would not say it's better or worse, it's just different. And you need to live with that one. It's a very strange thing when you say, it's just different, and I had to readjust it because you couldn't take an F1 approach because it wouldn't work there. Whatever you do, it wouldn't work. So, and I realized that pretty quick, that's the only thing I realized pretty quick, but I had a lot of learning to do because I wasn't exposed to that one, and therefore I say, when you asked me before about why USF1 didn't succeed, it's just like I didn't have the experience in NASCAR, and then I realized this is all different, I underestimated what it is, it's actually quite complex as well, but in its own way, and you have to learn, it takes time. So it took us a little bit of time, and but it wasn't easy because you have to adapt a complete different culture, of doing things, and I think for me it was good to learn this.
What is different about the racing culture in America?
It's a more simplistic way of going racing. And simplistic, I don't mean as negative, I mean it as positive. It's about racing. It's not about the politics. It's not about anything else. It's about going racing. So technology is not a big factor in it. That's a side factor. So while in F1, technology is over everything, science is over everything. In NASCAR racing, it's more about the gut feeling, the experience. It got more sophisticated in the last years. Like everything, it evolves, but not at the rate like Formula One.
What could Formula One learn from NASCAR?
Sometimes to keep things a little bit simpler than we do. And I mean in general, just in general, like make our life a little bit easier.
But less of a reliance on technology, do you think?
No, because, I maybe contradict myself here, but Formula One, it's about technology. If we take technology away from Formula One, it's not Formula One anymore. Then we have got a single-seater series, which we have got enough around in the world. Formula One lives off technology. I just would say the approach of how we deal with each other and how we want to bring the business forward. That's what we should learn in the United States.
And did your time in NASCAR help you understand people like Gene Haas? Do you feel that if you hadn't had that experience in NASCAR, perhaps it wouldn't have been such a smooth transition working at Haas, for Haas?
Absolutely, 100%. Without that experience there and understanding the culture, understanding the culture is maybe a big word, but it's getting to know the culture. It's better because understanding takes a long time. For me personally, it was a good thing. I admit that one. Because you think a little bit different. If you're in Formula One or European motorsport, you get very blinker view of everything. Well, if you go different places, like everything in life, more things you see, a wider perspective you get. That's always my opinion. And I got a lot of that. And as you said, if I would not have worked in NASCAR, Gene, I think, I could not explain what we are planning to do like I could having been there.
Now, there have been 3 phases to your career. There's the rallying phase, the Formula One phase, and NASCAR. Which of those 3 have you enjoyed the most?
I enjoyed them all because they're part of my life and my career. I enjoyed them all in different elements. As motor racing, I would say for sure I technology and all that stuff, Formula One, because it's the pinnacle of motorsport. For sure you have to enjoy that best because it would be easy to go back to do something different. But this is what I like, and the challenge every day, it's complex, and maybe I say things here like we should make it easier, but maybe I'm in here because I want it complicated. That for maybe we are all here. Yeah. There is never...
Masochist.
Yeah, exactly. I confuse people here by saying these things, but that is how I see it. But I enjoyed all parts of it. I mean, rallying in the day, it was great. I haven't been on a rally a long time now, but what people tell me, it has changed a lot as well. In the old day, when I went sometimes testing with Carlos Sainz, his son drives now in Formula One, we were away a month testing and wrecking. We were on our own. We had no cell phones, no computer, nothing, because at the time, in the 90s, it didn't exist.
It was a real adventure back then.
Exactly. That was the element of adventure, was great. I mean, if you're in your 20s and be allowed to do that, or have the opportunity to do this, it's fantastic. But now would like to stay up 5 nights in a row and sleep in a car for 2 hours and nap. No, I'm too old for that. But at the time, it was fantastic. Learning in NASCAR, learning about the culture, learning something new was great. I mean, I still live in the United States because I like it there. That gave me the opportunity to do that one. So there is always great things to do, and I have nothing negative to say about any of them.
Now, what about Carlos Sainz? What kind of a driver was he? And when you were working for Ford and rallying with him, did you meet Junior?
No, I know when Junior was born because I worked for Carlos, actually.
Yeah.
I was his mechanic. And I mean, I have a great deal of respect for Carlos.
How good was he?
He was very good, but what was good, if he could focus so hard on something to get it. Like Noel, I worked with a lot of great drivers, with Colin, Kankonen, all these people, Salonen, even older people, but nobody was as... If you threw Carlos a bone, he didn't let go. He wanted to do it. He was very professional. I learned a lot in my how I conduct business, how I'm from Carlos. You need to be always correct. You need to do what you say you're going to do. There is nothing grey with Carlos. It's either black or white. And I'm very similar to him, but I learned a lot from him how to conduct. Like, you need to be professional, always prepared, work hard. I think talent-wise, there was people better than him, but nobody as a package at his time was better than him because he had talent and the determination and the professionalism to put it all together. Therefore, he was world champion.
And what a great teacher for Carlos Jr. as well, not just Guenther Steiner.
I mean, Carlos will get upset now if he hears this, but he can be also a pain in the backside sometimes. So I hope he's not with his son.
He's a racing driver or rally driver.
Yeah, but Carlos is special on that one, But I think he knows exactly how to help Carlos Jr. in his career. He's very good at it.
Okay. Now, a moment ago we were talking about America. I just wanted to ask you about life in America, because the family is still over in Mooresville, North Carolina. And how is it? How is your daughter, who's 10, is she growing up American rather than Italian, for example?
Yeah, it's her birthday today, actually,
Oh, happy
10th
birthday.
living in America is very good. I mean, I enjoy it, or we enjoy it as a family. I always go back to my place in northern Italy in the summer holidays. We still got an apartment there. We go there 2-3 weeks. So she is exposed to different cultures. That's what I think helped me a lot in my career, because I grew up in Italy but speaking German. So I understand German culture, I understand Italian culture, and now I understand American culture, which helps you a lot when you deal with people and when you want to do something, that there is differences and you need to respect cultures. That's what you learn mainly. Learning about cultures, for me, is respecting them. So, because we all do things different, and my daughter, she's growing up in America. She goes to school there, but she's exposed quite a bit also to Northern Italy culture, and so I hope that's an advantage for her, but we like it there, and in the moment there is no plan to go anywhere. I've got my company there in the United States with my business partner, so that's doing well, so no plans to do anything different.
How often do you get back?
I go back between each race. Back-to-backs, I sometimes don't go back, but even last year when the triple header was, I went back even only for 2 days, because first of all I want to see my family, and then I think if you're just on the road, you miss something. You sometimes need to go back to base, put yourself back to base to reorganize your thoughts and then have a go at it again.
Reset.
Yeah.
So we're talking in Bahrain. Have you been back to North Carolina since Melbourne?
Yes, I went straight from Melbourne to North Carolina and then flew to London. I left North Carolina Sunday night late and flew to London because we had a strategy meeting on Tuesday, and then came from London to Bahrain on Wednesday lunchtime. I started there.
So you actually have 3 homes. You've got one in North Carolina, one in Northern Italy, and one at 37,000 feet, haven't you?
Correct. I was going to say the third one, it's somewhere, and it's a lot on the plane, yeah.
Well, Gunther, it's been a fabulous career. I suppose final question from me is, where did this passion for motorsport come from? Because you're a guy who's from a rural bit of northern Italy. There's not a lot of motorsport around there. Was your dad into it, or what can you say?
No, actually, my family isn't into it. In that part of Italy, there is no motorsport. Or at the time, there was one race, a hill climb, European Championship, and called Piano Mendola, and that was the only event which happened. But already as a kid, I was always interested in fast cars, but mainly racing cars, and I came, I don't know where from, and I always begged my father to take me to this race. And I don't remember how old I was when I went the first time, but I was pretty young. Then there is another race in the neighboring province, basically, and we went to that one as well because I begged him. My father actually wasn't really interested in motorsport. For sure, at the time, he watched a little bit of F1 because it was in the 70s when I was a kid, so, but not passionate about it. And I just always had this, and somehow ended up here.
Did you ever go to the Austrian Grand Prix or Italian Grand Prix at Monza?
I went to one Grand Prix as a spectator. That was I was 18 years old, because I think 18 or 19, because I was in the army, and the Austrian Grand Prix. I just went there with 2 friends, and we just, like you do when you're young, you camped out, you party a little bit, and we had good fun. But otherwise, when I started Formula One, my next Grand Prix was when I was in my 30s. I was invited by Ford, when Ford in the beginning bought Jaguar or maybe it was Stewart still. Stewart GP, when Ford sponsored Stewart GP, I worked for Ford on the rally car, so I went to a Grand Prix as a guest.
So when you were at the Austrian Grand Prix aged 18, was it like a eureka moment for you, in that you saw the cars, you smelt the fuel, the tyres, and thought, this is what I want to do with my life? Because Toto Wolff, funnily enough, on one of these Beyond the Grid podcasts, said it was when he was stood on the grid at a Formula 3 race at the Nürburgring, he said it was like a lightning bolt for him. Did it have that effect on you?
No, I wouldn't say. I mean, I was enjoying myself. I liked it. I followed it. But where I come from, there was never. I never thought the opportunity would come along to do this. It's a strange thing. I didn't think I can ever do this. I enjoyed myself and had fun with my friends and watched the race.
Now, what about your feel for the history of the sport? Because did you know, for example, that your birthday, 7th of April, has a sort of tinge of sadness about it because it was the 7th of April in '68, of course, that Jim Clark was killed at Hockenheim. Were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't aware. My knowledge of history in F1, it's actually bad. I wouldn't say little bad. It's really bad because it's one of those things I sometimes, when people ask me during the season, you remember the race 5-6 races ago? I sometimes don't even know where we finished. If we didn't have a good result, I just it's just not what I like to do. I mean, I respect the history and deal with it, but it's not something which I'm passionate about. That I always try to look forward. What can we do? Not what was done.
How can you make history, I suppose? I mean, hey, that brings us on really to, this year, Haas. What would you be happy with?
I would be happy with fourth. Obviously, if we come fifth, I'm still happy. But last year we missed out on fourth because of our own doing. We made too many mistakes. This year it seems like we have got a pretty good car again. And we try to get fourth. But the most important thing is that we grow as a team, that we keep on going forward, that we get better, and then the results come automatically. So we need to make less mistakes, and hopefully we finish up fourth.
And you think you've got the drivers to do that? Quick word on Roman and Kevin Magnussen.
Yeah, I think where we are at, and now especially they are a long time with us, they know what we can do, what they can do. There is good feeling, chemistry between all of us, engineers, drivers between them. So I think we've got the drivers for where we are at. I couldn't see, I mean, there is a few around which are equal for sure, and depending on the day they could be better, but they could be worse. But it's in that midfield, the mix of drivers is pretty good in the moment. So you get one guy which is better on one circuit, one guy better on the other. So and then I think we are very comfortable with our two because they are with us a long time and they know, and we don't have to learn to get to know each other anymore.
And I'm guessing that middle of last year when Roman was having his problems, it's a very desirable team, Haas now. Did you have a lot of drivers knocking on your door saying,
Did Roman have ever a problem last year?
I've seen the Netflix.
No, seriously. No, sure. I mean, there was, I would say people were asking, but I think last year a lot of people, I guess, and I'm not sure about because nobody told me, thought that it was a one-year wonder, I would call it, because we were pretty competitive. But again, it seems like this year we have got a 2-year wonder. But there was some people investigating. But to be honest, we never really looked in. I rather wanted to, how should I call it, fix Roman, because we know how quick he can be if he's in the right frame of mind. And that was my biggest issue, to get him back where he can be. That was much more worth than trying to find the next one to me. And it seems that it worked out the second half of the season, and hopefully it works out the whole season this year.
Hey, well, Gunther, yes, let's hope it works out. Thank you very much for your time. It's been wonderful to speak to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. What you see is what you get with Gunther. He's very direct and has many similarities with the successful Austrians in our sport, such as his hero, Niki Lauda. The F1 paddock is certainly a more colourful and interesting place for having him in it. Thanks for your time, Gunther. I really enjoyed our chat, and thanks too to Haas for the hospitality. Well, that's it for this episode. It's crazy to think that Season 2 of Beyond the Grid is already 4 episodes old. But that's nothing compared to the great sport of Formula One, which celebrates its 1000th race in China. And to help us celebrate, we've got an F1 legend behind the mic next week. No spoilers, but you're definitely not going to want to miss this one. The best way to ensure you don't miss it, or any episode for that matter, is to subscribe. That way, the latest episode of Beyond the Grid will be waiting for you every Wednesday. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and tons of other podcast platforms. Thanks as ever for your feedback. It seems you enjoyed last week's episode with Luca di Montezemolo. Gary got in touch to say, I think I could listen to Luca's calm, sing-song Italian accent all day. Well, me too, Gary. It was an illuminating chat, wasn't it? And remember, you can drop me a line on Twitter at Tom Clarkson F1. Beyond the Grid is produced by F1 in association with Audio Boom. Until next time, keep it flat out.